Hey there, it's WTIC. Welcome to another week. It's a week without Ron DeSantis. That's nice. He's gone back to Florida. Straighten out that state, I guess, and leave the Republican nomination to Nikki Haley and, what's his name, Donald Trump. We'll talk about that coming up. We've got stuff to talk about. There's, the governor's pursuit of the elimination of gas-burning engines in advance of a suitable replacement having been proven available. So there's good stuff to talk about. We're going to talk with a young guy. Ethan Brown is his name. He's 24 years old. He's a climate activist, and he's talking about intersectionality of climate, which is a big thing in particular for young voters. Climate and also Zionism in the Middle East. Ethan Brown, welcome to WTIC. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you wrote an article for The Hill a couple of weeks ago, which is really interesting because it demonstrates that there's a kind of a collision, it seems, going on between people like yourself who are climate activists and people like yourself who are pro-Israel and supportive of Israel and want to see Israel and support for Hamas or Palestinians merged into the movement in a way that's destructive to the climate change movement. Is that what your concern is?
Yeah, I've seen a growing trend since October 7th where a lot of folks in the climate movement are trying to and I fully support people having their own views, but they're trying to link the pro-Palestinian cause, anti-Israel sentiments to the climate movement. And as someone, like you said, I'm Jewish. My heart breaks for anyone innocent who's died in this conflict, the Israelis who are being held hostage. But I also love Israel. I have been there. It was magical. And to see this connection being made based on a lot of misconceptions, even some inaccuracies, that's been really frustrating to me.
As I read your column, as somebody, I believe in the American system of government as laid out by the founders. That is that small government is the only way to beat the oppression of large centralized power. And the worst, most dangerous kind of large centralized power is government, because it doesn't have to earn its money. It just takes it. And it doesn't have to earn its land. It just takes it. And it's got the weapons and the bombs, all managed by people who haven't really worked their way up through the delivery of product to their customers. And that seems to me the only relationship we can trust. So when I was reading your column, what I was thinking about was, okay, here's a guy who is concerned about the climate and his fellow climate activists, which have become a large centralized source of power inside American politics, are abandoning their mission, in a sense, by merging it into something it has nothing to do with. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think, if you read any work, I've been critical of climate activists whenever I disagree with them, but I think that this in particular was concerning to me because it's yet another action that disengages a lot of people from this movement, you could say. Everyone wants clean air, clean water, and a healthy environment. I find that's just necessary for living. But a lot of actions that the climate movement takes to kind of say you have to support this policy to be part of it, or you have to be of this ideology to be a part of it, you start losing people. And we've seen in the U.S. the amount of environmentalists tanked from 78% in 1991 to 41% in 2021. Something like this, I fear, could lower that number even more. So I would like to see this environment, climate world be as inclusive as possible, bring every voice in so we can hear perspectives like, if you prefer small government, how to pursue environmentalism with that, or really anything. But stuff like this gets in the way.
But how do you have an environmental movement that is national/worldwide and not have it adopt an agenda? Because it seems like what you're saying is you want to you want a movement, you don't mind the movement, but they shouldn't be pushing specific solutions because that's divisive. And I agree with you, it is divisive. Like, my whole problem with the environmental movement is assuming that all of their assumptions are true about climate change. I haven't seen anyone require of them that they prove the efficacy of the solutions that they propose. And they're well beyond proposing them. They're baking them into our legal system and our laws and our societal expectations without having any public conversation, without any democracy taking place about something like, should we all be driving electric cars?
I would like to see a movement that encapsulates a lot of disagreeing views that can work together. I think all that we need to agree on is a desire for clean air, clean water, and a healthy environment. Mm-hmm. From there, obviously, there's science, and we should read the science, and I think understand that. And then talking about solutions, there should be room for disagreement. Of course there should. And figuring out what's the best way to go about it. The way to do that is to have as many perspectives in that room as possible. So I always, in my reporting, try to look at every solution, explore the pros and cons. And I found that when I can bring more people from different perspectives into that conversation, I learn more myself, and we come up with better ideas overall. I think the bipartisan environmental policies are largely better than when one party tries to ram something through. So again, that's what I'd like to see, and that's why stuff like this with the Israel stuff bothers me.
We're talking to Ethan Brown. He's the host of a podcast called The Sweaty Penguin, and he's got a piece in The Hill from a couple weeks back that is on the issue of climate change merging into a activism on the part of the Palestinians and addressing the war in the Middle East. And this is this world you're asking for is interesting, Ethan, because I don't think it exists with regard to any issue. The idea of politics, in my mind, is to have a nonviolent means for litigating disagreement on policy ideas. And we live in an age in which there really isn't pursuit of policy ideas that I can see that is exclusive of how to lock in blocks of voters in order to control election outcomes. So you can say, we can all agree young people deserve a great education, but the pro-education movement in this country is a pro-public education movement. And you can go through one issue after another and find that these power structures don't operate in the way that you're suggesting. How do you respond to that?
Oh, I agree with you that it's not how it works right now. I think the goal, at least the goal in a lot of my work, is to show that you can care about clean air, clean water, a healthy climate, endangered species. You can care about all these issues and have the same ideology as the environmental movement or a different ideology than what we think of as the environmental movement, because there are solutions to these issues that can be more regulations or can be more deregulations, can be more monetary incentives and more market-based policies, or can be more command and control policies. And again, that's where I think shifting debate away from is this an issue to what are the solutions to this issue and what can we agree on policy-wise, that I think is the productive conversation.
Yeah, it's just not one that I hear anybody having in our politics. It's kind of interesting that you propose it, and it sounds delightfully naive, but you're right. That's where it should be. We should all be having conversations, but our politics, to me, seems rigged to avoid conversation, to make sure that you get shunned if you dare step outside of the dogma of the issue in question. Is that your view of it?
Yeah, it's a problem. Political polarization is a big issue. It's really why I got into this whole thing to begin with. But I've learned as I've gone, for example, in the U.S. in the last 5 years or so, we've passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act, the Infrastructure Bill, the Great American Outdoors Act, BEST Act, Use It Act, Nuclear Energy Leadership Act, all with bipartisan majorities in Congress, both under Biden and Trump administrations. And these were not climate direct bills, but they included climate stuff in them that both sides agreed on. And we don't hear about it. Whereas the partisan bickering stuff gets all the news. So I would hope that if people could see that there is some common ground on this, maybe it can start to spur those conversations, and maybe that can get some more of the limelight, because I think that brings us a lot more hope and excitement.
So what, give us a closing thought on this particular realm that you're interested in with regard to the Middle East and what's happening in Israel and the war there, and how it intersects with the climate change movement here.
Yeah, I would encourage people to look up my piece in The Hill. I think I laid out a lot of different aspects of it, but in terms of how this intersects with the climate world, climate does offer a lot of opportunity for common ground. And in this region of the world, it's one of the fastest warming regions. Israelis, Palestinians, Jordanians all face very similar climate challenges. And that means climate solutions can be a bridge builder. And I've seen people out there who are doing that work. So the more we can look to people who are actually trying to build bridges as opposed to divide, I think the better off we're all going to be.
Ethan Brown hosts the Sweaty Penguin podcast on climate change. He's into the climate movement. He's also a Zionist, and so it's all interesting stuff, and it's all interesting to hear a young person talking about not aligning under power centers, but instead everybody exploring their own ideas on issues. Thank you, Ethan, for taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks for having me. It was great to chat with you.
All righty. Ethan Brown on WTIC. And you can check out his column on The Hill. It's called Climate Movement Splinters as Activists Target Israel. 860-522-9842. We're going to pause briefly and then get into some other stuff and take some phone calls coming up on WTIC.